Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the Youth Perspective. This is a podcast organized by CALD Youth, and it aims to discuss social issues and youth issues and the role of youth in these different social and political and economic issues. This podcast is brought to you by CALD with the support of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom. And this is the second podcast. We are on Spotify, Apple Music, SoundCloud, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Now, before we begin, the topic that we're going to talk about today is influencers, social media, and activism. We'll try to understand the connection between these three things: influencers as actors, activism as a method or function, and social media as the platform. And we are very grateful that we have our influencers who are our guests today. We have Miss Kakie Pangilinan. She is a 20-year-old singer-songwriter. In her own words, a struggling artist. She has built a platform on social media as a place of conversation about social issues. She loves writing more than anything except her country, and has always just wanted to stick by her principles. She likes race cars and fruity wine and is currently working on her album and activism. She is also the daughter of Philippine Senator Kiko Pangilinan and Filipina actress Sharon Cuneta. Mark Averilla, better known on the internet as Macoy Dubs, is a Filipino influencer with hundreds of thousands of followers and a lecturer in Colegio de San Juan de Letran. Macoy has made several viral videos with comedic sketches and scenarios, but all of them aren't just all about laughs. McCoy also speaks out on national issues through entertainment. Uses the social media platforms to represent the voice of today's youth and tackle important topics and opinions while keeping it light-hearted by mixing in comedic sketches. McCoy is also an active participant in online talks and forums that tackle national and social topics. So hello, Kaki and McCoy. How are you? What have you been busy with these past few weeks and months?
Hello,
Hello.
everyone. Hi, Kakie. It's good to see you
Hi.
again.
I miss you so much. Hi, Christian. So nice to meet you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, Christian. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I hope the both of you are okay and um, fine despite the pandemic and the challenges and limitations of the pandemic. Um, Perhaps we can get right into our topic. Today we will discuss influencers, activism, and social media, trying to understand how they are all connected, and we're trying to look into this through the perspective of a youth leader or a youth or an active youth in our society. We're also trying to consider that there is a political shift that is about to come. Next year is the 2022 elections, and things might or may not change. And we know that we have a role to play in this political shift. Now, for both Kaki and Makoy, we all know that the evolution of social media has given rise to influencers. You know, endorsing a brand or a product isn't out of the ordinary. But what happens when an influencer endorses a politician? Do you think, as influencers, you can heavily impact the results of the upcoming election? Let's start with Kaki.
Okay. So I think before anything, I'd like to establish that personally, I feel as if I really have qualms about the digital age that we're now in, where we've sort of quantified influence into followers and likes and things like that. When and I say this a lot, but I really like repeating it because it's so important, I think, to remember that the term influence predates social media. It makes it clear that everybody has our own sphere of influence. No. And so I think that this conversation is really important because I want to remind anybody who's listening that everybody is an influencer in their own way, in their own right, because you have your own circle of friends, your own, that's your sphere of influence, but friends, family, people you know intimately, people who you can have like these important conversations with, and people who you can affect and impact in that same way, right? And these conversations nowadays, because we're obviously living in such times that there's so much going on, no? There's so much tension, especially opening the digital space, entering the digital space in the last few weeks. It's been really sort of like, wow, overwhelming for me to even scroll through a Twitter feed, which is, I'm sure, a lot of people are feeling, especially post pandemic, right? Or like, well, not even post, like in the midst, but of the pandemic, like as we teeter off the edge, hopefully. I think that it's really important to keep maintaining those conversations regardless of who your audience is. But like, obviously, if you do have a larger audience, then there is a certain level of responsibility also that comes with keeping those conversations alive, with people, and like doing your best to connect with one another through that space. That I think it's such an invaluable tool now. We're approaching an election year also, which is so, like you said, like endorsing politicians and things like that. I think it's also important to recognize that we do not stan politicians. We do not idolize politicians. We don't idolize these people, but like it's good to sort of keep that dialogue alive regarding whose policies do we think will affect us in a positive way, whose policies do we think we need right now for the time that we're in, and who do we think has our best interests at heart, no? And things like that. And it's a really great tool, I think, social media in general, for fostering that kind of communication. No, as long as yun nga lang, it also comes with like the hostility once in a while. But that's why, it's like give and take, and like just make sure, do your best to always approach things kindly, because I think so much gets lost in translation between text and like, as opposed to face-to-face conversations where things, tone and inflection and social, cues and things like that. Parang we lose so much of that online. So tuloy minsan nagiging hostile na yung conversation. But I think that to an extent, it's super healthy to just maintain that dialogue and ensure that people hear from you your thoughts, and your feelings about certain things. And as long as you maintain your integrity and like you do your best to stay educated, stay up to date on news, and provide comprehensive information where it counts.
Thank you, Kaki. I think that's a very helpful insight. It's good that you have kind of broadened the term of influencers to include those that may not have online platforms but can still influence other people's lives based on their decisions and the choices that they make. And let's ask Macoy, what do you think about the question of influencers endorsing politicians, and do you think we can heavily impact the coming elections?
Very good insights, no, from Kaki. Very good points as well on pointing out that we are all influencers and content creators by our own right. For me, I think, well, me personally, I'm not really endorsing any politician for now, no, for the upcoming 2022 election. But I guess it's also the conscience na lang of the content creator if he or she is going to endorse a politician. But of course, there are a lot of points that need to be taken care well of, lalo na if the politician really has a good track record, di ba? Yan yung mga kailangan natin i-double check, no? Good track record, of course, performance in terms of legislation. What is, kumbaga, marami ring mga pointers na kailangan natin i-check before we endorse a politician. But me personally, most especially if the content creator has a very huge following, that could also really has an impact, no, kapag pagdating sa vote. So lalo na kung ang celebrity may 10 million subscribers on Instagram or let's say YouTube. So malaking factor 'yon. But then again, it all boils down kung sino yung i-endorse. Most especially the performance, track record wise, yun talaga yung kailangan natin i-check. But me personally, if I'm going to endorse a politician, yung politician na i-endorse ko, syempre dapat aligned din sa values ko, no? Aligned sa gusto natin mangyari for the Philippines. And I think right now what we all want as of the moment is better Philippines, no? Better country for all. Especially for the upcoming generations to come, gusto natin maayos lahat. Healthcare system, transportation, um, na yung tax natin na pupunta sa magandang bagay, hindi lang yung nako-corrupt. So, yun yung mga, I think for me, it's okay to endorse a politician as long as we endorse the right ones. That we feel na ito yung magbibigay ng pagbabago sa bansa. But, as of the moment, I'm all for voters' education. I'm all for um, voters registration. But politician endorsement, parang we need to think about it thrice. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Makoy. I think that's a very meaningful and accurate insight. It's hard for influencers to just endorse politicians. They go through a certain thought process and some level of scrutiny, because I understand in social media nowadays there is some sort of pressure towards influencers, like forcing them and pushing them to speak out on national issues, and sometimes to the point of asking them to condemn certain politicians or asking them to condemn certain policies. And I want to know what's your take on this. Like, how do you handle the pressures from social media? There is also what we call cancel culture. I think many influencers have already experienced this. What are your thoughts on cancel culture, and how do you handle pressure from the public?
Well, that's an interesting question. It's actually it's been the topic of a lot of internal self-realization, I think, that's been going on in quarantine, no? Especially because I think that people only really started paying attention to what I was saying on Twitter over quarantine. So it's been this curious time of bigla na lang there's like a weird audience there outside, no? And I think, like Makoy, we were sort of on that same that same
That's
rhythm, no?
true.
That same
Mm.
yeah, of like, because I think everybody was home and then paying attention to stuff online. And
And
I
it's
remember
like
that there was like,
they're monitoring every movement.
yeah,
Diba?
exactly. And there was really a time where it was every single day there was something I said or something that I know would sort of could be taken out of context. There's like things like that. But then I think that at the end of the day, I just realized na lang, because I was wasting so much energy also in trying to not naman please everybody. I don't think I've ever been like a super 100% people pleaser. Like, you do recognize that you're not going to be able to please everybody, you're not going to be able to. But I think I just realized that at the end of the day, what matters is that I maintain my own integrity, because I think that to a certain extent, your opinions can be swayed by the people who you follow, the people who you look up to, the people who you're engaging with online, right? And that's healthy to a certain extent, I think. Obviously, to the extent that like you keep an open mind and you learn new things and you learn from your mistakes, etc., and you acknowledge like kung san ka nagkamali, everything like that. But then there's also a limit to that, because you have to, I think there's a certain distinction between valid criticism and then criticism that's just generally hurtful then, or like yung parang medyo unnecessary. Like, if I tweet something about like my day, and then people are like, oh my god, this girl won't shut up, and I'm like, but this is my Twitter account, like, I'm sorry that you're seeing this, you can block me if you want to, parang stuff like that, yung parang hindi na pertinent to my life, I think. And like at the end of the day, yung nakakapagod na lang just to read all that stuff. And so, when stuff like that came up, I think that I just sort of retreated and I had to take a step back, not out of like fear or anything, but more out of just a personal responsibility, I think, to myself also, to just sort of how do you say, compartmentalize, no, in my head, like what is important to me, what actually matters about me being online, what do I like about it, and then what can I avoid, like like responsibly, no, because you don't want to avoid naman all criticism, period, because obviously as a person who, for some reason people were reading all my stuff, it's like I felt a certain responsibility also to speak out about certain things that mattered. And then for a while it was just nonstop, because I remember after Ihako, actually, this is a really good example. After Ihako, every day I would get like a mention of some sort that was accusing me of being a hypocrite, kunyari, because I wasn't talking about a specific like issue. I wasn't talking about a specific which is a harassment issue or like issue of abuse that I had never heard of prior to that, to seeing that mention of like, hypocrite ka kasi like you're not talking about this, but then akala ko ba iha ko, akala ko ba everybody's ano, and it was so weird because why is it suddenly like if I don't comment on a specific case every single time that these specific cases happen, it's like parang how does that make me a hypocrite? You know what I mean? And like it felt sort of strange. So for days I was trying to keep up with everybody's stories. I was going through my DMs and like reading so many stories from all these girls. And like as much as it was super inspiring, I think to a certain extent also I realized tao lang din ako. Like, you know what I mean? Like I think that like we all have our limits. Because how can you help anyone when you're not helping yourself also kapag kailangan mo na, diba? It's like when your head is already filled with so much noise. And when there's constant criticism back and forth, no matter what you do, it sort of feels like yung micro-analyzing, diba? Like all of your movements, all of your ano. And it feels sort of weirdly unfair. But then I also realized it just comes with it. Because yun nga, people get braver, I think, when there's no culpability, like direct, like face-to-face interaction, like that doesn't make them. Parang people don't feel the need to be polite. As when I know for a fact that people are very good, you know what I mean. Like if you met someone in person, I'm pretty sure half the things that you say online you wouldn't say to that person, diba? Like in speaking terms. And so I think I'm just proud na lang that like. I would never let myself, whenever I tweet something or whenever I post something, I just always try to remind myself, like, is this something I would say in real life? Is this something that I can say to somebody in real life, face to face, etc., and stuff like that? And there's a certain amount of peace that has to be made with it, because at the same time, if you're getting involved in activism as much, or if you're advocating for things that you feel are important and like change that you feel are important, there are always going to be people who disagree with you. And at the end of the day, the frustration and the stress and like the hurt that might cost you, that doesn't compare though. It pales in comparison to the hurt that what you're fighting for. You know what I mean? Yung parang to the hurt that the injustices that you're fighting against causes people every single day. And I think that putting that into perspective just is really what helped me to get through all of that. But interestingly enough, I was talking to my little sister the other day kasi nashock ako, sabi ko, why is it parang now ko lang nararamdaman yung stress ng online activity when everything is much calmer sort of on my end, or like it's been calm now for a couple of months. Parang ngayon ko naramdaman like yung takot of going online. And it's this mental health is so weird because when I was in the thick of it, when like every single day they were getting, the harassment messages and things like that, parang wala, to me it was like just keep it going, just keep it coming, like kayang-kaya ko yan. But then now, I think after having processed it, I don't know. It's so interesting. It's so strange. But I think that every feeling that people get naman online is understandable, albeit not necessarily justifiable. No? Cancel culture, for example. I think we have to learn. Sorry, this is so long, but I think we have to learn how to like understand people, like because you're able to understand. You can understand naman where people are coming from without necessarily agreeing with them. Parang nowadays it's so black and white. It's either you agree with them and therefore you're supporting them, or you're and stuff like that, or you disagree and then therefore you cut them off and then you cancel them completely and parang walang diba? And I feel like that's so pointless because why are we expecting perfection from people who are fundamentally imperfect? Like everybody's fundamentally imperfect. And so when did the standard become perfection? We love talking about standards in terms of yung mga impossible beauty standards online, but the truth is that standards online are just impossible in general because you can't please everybody. And I think that people also have to understand that they can't be pleased all the time. And there's a difference obviously when it comes to like canceling yung mga murderers and like rapists and like things like that, mga kurako, like obviously cancel away. But at the same time there's like there should be some, I don't know, parang ethical, philosophical problem in my head. I'm not sure if I can phrase this correctly, but I'm sure Macoy has much better thoughts on this, more concise.
Thank you, Kakie. Let's hear from Macoy and then let's try to process all of these insights. Macoy?
What I know about the cancel culture, it was a trend in the United States wherein we cancel all the brands that promotes, animal testing. That's what I mean, that's the concept of cancel culture na alam ko. No? And we cancel the bad governance from several politicians in the United States. No? During the Trump era, it's very prevalent, no? That, okay, we need to cancel Donald Trump because he's against the Asian Americans, he's against the Latin, something like that. But then it evolved to canceling several celebrities as well. So like for example, parang si Kim Kardashian, they canceled Kanye West because of ganito. And parang it came out of hand na rin because parang minsan mapapansin mo, parang wala nang sense. Parang minsan wala nang sense bakit natin pinakancel yung mga tao online. Kahit naman yung mga statements nila, hindi naman din masyadong nakaka-apekto sa buhay natin in general. Hindi ba? So, I remember during the quarantine university, right, Kakie, we want to cancel the bad. We want to cancel the bad, but we want also to cancel harassment, we want to cancel corruption, something like that. Yun ang dapat na i-cancel. And that should be the root for cancel culture. Not just about, pag hindi kayo sane ng statement ng content creator na fina-follow mo, and then you will just cancel him or her, ganun na lang. I remember last year, when I was creating the Auntie Julie character, people were canceling me because they told me that I was creating a divide in the society between the rich and the poor. And ang sabi ko, saan ang galing yun? Saan galing yung ganun? Because ako, as the creator of the character, I don't really have an intention to create a divide. I just want to create a video wherein I can, um, you know, feature Filipino tita culture by doing comedy skits, and then that's it, but not to create a divide. Um, Yon, and I think cancel culture, yun din yung nagiging toxic, no? And in terms of politics naman, ganun din. They're putting colors into it, which is really bad. Like people were telling me as well na ganito pala si Macoy, ganyan-ganyan. Tak ako, hindi ko gets, di ba? And just like Kakie what mentioned earlier, I don't also want to waste my time and energy reading all the comments. That's why last year I told myself I won't read the comments na because it makes no sense. Like when you have a content and when you post something, out of 1,000, there are two or three, five bad comments, and then it will just make your day bad. Parang apektado ka na rin. But what I've learned as well is that you must learn how to compartmentalize. Na parang okay, you read that comment, but then you move forward. Parang hayaan mo na. Diba? Nandiyan na yan eh. And I think cancel culture and the bashers online, it's part of the social media ecosystem. And I think that should be regulated. And there should be a course or let's say a curriculum wherein dapat we should know how to be a responsible social media citizen. And of course, just to add, let's also add voters education in the curriculum. Para bata pa lang, they have an idea already who to vote, di ba? And by following moral and ethical standards of the society.
All right. Thank you, Macoy and Kaki, for your answers. So just to try to lift the base ideas of these insights, I like that I like your thought process of compartmentalizing and trying to simplify the process. You recognize that whatever you post online, whatever content you create, they are received differently, and so we do not have to react on all of them. And this comes with the recognition that sometimes there is a pressure putting the influencers in some form of pedestal, like seeking the people online are seeking accountability from you. They're expecting you to be perfect. They expect you to be politically correct all the time. Probably one last question, just to close this. Are you proactively educating yourselves on issues on matters that you want to speak up about in the future. Like for example, if you soji, sexual orientation and gender identity. Sometimes we create content about it. So do you educate yourself on these issues as well, or what do you normally do? Just a short answer for this question.
I think that for me, a lot of the time when I like reading articles in general, like, and Twitter is honestly a great source for that because it's all of the news outlets and it's all everybody's talking about in one place, no, in one feed. Like anything that you want to see or read or learn about, as long as you're following those sites or like those people, etc., it's like you get access to that information. And like if you know how to properly view your sources and check whether or not they're credible, then that in itself I think is a skill that's important to anybody who's online. No, because fake news is its own virus, honestly, especially nowadays. And I think that mga Gen Z millennials were much better at finding the distinction between the fake news and the real news. Like as soon as you see an article or as soon as you see something, usually to people of our age group, like the youth nga, as soon as we see something online, we can already tell if it's credible, if it's real, or if it's, you know, falsified, if it's put together, if it's Photoshop lang, in like sort of like in a crude way, no, or if it's clickbait, etc. Like we have all this terminology already that sort of establishes how we interpret the tone of others and the tone of content online, which is an invaluable set of sort of skills, no? Because I no matter how many times I try to teach my parents honestly about that, they don't get it. Like they'll always show, my mom will always end up in some rabbit hole on YouTube na puro conspiracy theories, and I'm just like, Mom, like please, like I need you to block these na on your YouTube. I need you to already put yung parang not interested, diba? Like stop recommending me this and things like that. Kasi si mami ko, she loves just consuming it nonstop. And I have to tell her sometimes na parang, Mama, that's kind of a sketchy site, no? The voice is a robotic voice, and they're talking about yung, you know, the rapture, etc. And I have to be like, Mama, like relax muna tayo, diba? So like certain things like that, I'm very grateful. I think that this generation has grown up in that digital space, headspace already, where we can recognize those things and differentiate from them, no? But that being said, it's sort of, yun nga, there's also, I think that for me, I do my best always to make sure that I'm not going to talk about something I don't know about, you know, because it's embarrassing lang din. It's like being with your barkada and then two people have an inside joke or something, bigla kang makikitawa, and then they'll be like, oh, ba't ka tawang-tawa? Like, hindi mo naman alam yung joke, diba? So it's like it was, in simplest terms, it's embarrassing to talk about something that you don't understand, right? To talk about something that you don't fully get. And I think that at the same time, though, as much as we, you know, because people also love preaching that's what I find also so funny, because online, there's a big wave of, if you have a following, right, you have to speak up. Or if you have a following, then you have to talk about these issues, and that's great. But then when people don't talk about these, like when people naman talk about these issues really fast, then the criticisms also come in na parang, you need to educate yourself. You need to read about this. You need to, like, I feel as if people need to be patient with one another as well. Like learn that like some people, because some people are not always you know, we don't have the free time or the luxury of being online every second of every day, right? It's like you obviously there are certain issues that we like to focus on, and there are certain issues that we want to discuss or that we want to look deeper into and see how we can help and, like, you know, sort of help learn about those things and like what's going on in the world. But then there's also this, I feel like I will keep doing that. I will keep reading articles and keep educating myself on matters that I'm not necessarily, because there was a time where I would be pressured, kunyari na parang, oh, basahin mo to immediately, like you have to know about this. And then, you know, you fall down. I wouldn't sleep because then you're reading everything and trying your best to like formulate an opinion or trying your best to formulate thoughts and comprehensive things like that. And the truth is, with so many things going on, especially nowadays, it's impossible to know everything about everything, you know? And so I think that I've tried to shift focus, and I've tried to make, like, you know, instead of spreading yourself too thin, no, on the online space, and instead of, kasi you can't naman I don't think that it's really possible for anybody to address and like be 100% on top of every issue ever, right? Because in addition to like that just being impossible, even if one were online all the time, we all have lives. We're all we have friends, we have work, we have school, we have people who we care about, we have our family issues. You know what I mean? We have things that we're dealing with privately that people in the online space can't necessarily, they don't need to know. And that's the weird thing about it. People, I think that online being transparent and like, being like accountable and like having that transparency with an audience, it can sort of create this illusion that an audience deserves to know every single detail about one person's life or deserves to know all the context about somebody's background and somebody's, you know what I mean? And like, I think that at the moment, what should just be, I don't want to say normalized, what should just be accepted is as, is that people have their own lives. We're all doing what we can. And I don't think that there's anybody out there who wants to be an evil person, Parang especially on the online space. Yun nga, back to like the whole cancel culture thing. Kasi nagiging moral superiority game na lang eh. It's not naman trying to educate someone or trying to be kind about it or trying to raise awareness. Nagiging bullying na eh. Kasi when you tell somebody, like when you make violent threats against somebody online, what is that teaching that person? That's not doing anything. You're just being mean and being like, oh, yung ganun, moral superiority, medyo elitist pa nga a little bit because you're assuming that everybody is as educated on a topic as you are. When people have, different struggles, different things going on in their lives. And I think that, yeah, yun na lang. I'll just end it na there. I'm sorry, that was so long again, but I really go off on a tangent. I love you guys. Thank you.
It's okay, Kakie. Now let's hear from Macoy.
Super valid points from Kakie. And, while Kakie was speaking, sabi ko talaga, totoo, no? Talagang, sabi ko, ganito talaga yung nangyayari. And this is the reality that we are living in, and we need to deal with it. But somehow we have this kind of responsibility to change it, to make social media a better space for all of us. Social media kasi, it's the boom of social media, and everyone is there. But also you will realize na each platform may kanya-kanya ding audience, right? You go to Facebook, everyone's there. But the sad part on Facebook, there's also misinformation everywhere. You go to Instagram, it's also nice because visually aesthetic, inspiration. But what's bad about Instagram, of course, there's gonna be envy, right? Parang, ay, ingit ako, ganda ng body nga. Ingit ako na dito siya sa ibang bansa. Twitter, of course, with Twitter, sometimes, what's good about Twitter? Ako, I agree Kakie, ako din. Pagka gusto ko ng balita, I want quick information or news, I go to Twitter. But the sad part on Twitter, we can also create clout. No? Parang panggulo. Panggulo of the day. Now, TikTok, of course, quick videos, short videos with full information, but sometimes na proliferate din ng sexuality and some ng bad images, and sometimes parang na rin, no, mga trolls are there na rin. So what I'm trying to say is these platforms, these are all good platforms, but syempre meron ding downside, no? And we as social media users, kami ni Kakie as content creators, we have the power as well to change these behaviors. Kasi nakakalungkot na minsan kapag yung mga influencers or content creators ay nag-pressure sila na magsalita. Pero we have to acknowledge that sometimes these people, they have interests to protect as well. No, like for example, it's not easy for a big celebrity to speak up kasi baka mamaya meron pala siyang connection with a huge public figure, no? That is why there's also a rise of micro influencers. There's also a rise of mini influencers wherein sila din yung nagsispeak up about issues because mas may power sila. And with their voice, mas nag-amplify kapag dumami rin yung mga followers nila. So, yun yung totoo doon, no? And me, I educate myself. I educate myself before ako magsalita, before ako mag-reply to anything. Parang ano yan eh, parang it's like a car wherein you start the engine of your car and then you let the engine warm up first before you drive it. So parang gera din, di ba? Hindi ka pupunta ng gera na wala kang bala, di ba? Na wala kang tangke to protect yourself. Kasi what if there are questions na hindi mo masagot? So syempre ang backfire sa amin din, di ba? So I educate myself about these things. But not all the time din. Kasi tao lang din naman kami, no? Tao lang din kami ni Kakie. Ako personally, minsan may mga bagay akong hindi alam about farmers, about the economy, diba? But I know a lot about, of course, mental health, sexual health related concerns or topics, and HIV and AIDS awareness, and so ganyan. But in other quadrants of topics, minsan wala rin akong knowledge. Kaya magbabasa muna ako. But yun yung mahirap din doon kasi para ba kaming nakatira sa loob ng Big Brother house wherein naka-monitor, may nagmo-monitor sa amin 24/7. Parang I'm waiting for Macoy's statement. I'm waiting for Kakie's statement. But these people should understand na not all the time makakapagsalita kami. Like, what's your stand about ganyan? Okay, there's an issue on Twitter now, something like that. What can you say? Parang ako, like yesterday, there's an issue on Twitter, right? Parang there are people messaging me, okay, di ba you're connected with him or connected with her? What can you say? And I choose to back off kasi I don't know what's going on. I'm not on Twitter for almost 3 months now, and I'm limiting my social media usage, except Instagram, syempre nagsistories ako. Pero yun, parang may mga bagay din kami na kailangan pagtuunan ng pansin to enrich ourselves, to make our brains nurtured before we give statements to these issues. So, but we are doing our best. Kakie and I, and some content creators out there, we are doing our very best to educate ourselves and to use our platform for the common good. You know, let's put it that way na lang. Na we're doing our efforts, but we need more help as well from other content creators and influencers out there. Dun sa mga big public figures or celebrities na medyo hirap din mag-speak up, fine. Iwan na natin sa kanila yan, ibigay na natin sa kanila. But how about the other ones na mas brave? We need more of them. And we salute them for, being so brave na sabihin ko ano yung gusto nila.
I'd also just like to add, no, it's also important, I think, that people sort of understand that for a lot of people online who've built a following online, that means that your profession is probably dependent on your online presence, no? In addition to those like bigger celebrities now who we can't really, like, people I don't think can process that baka naman kasi there's also some work on the line, no? Baka, like, somebody could get sued. Like, you don't like, there's so many things in the fine print of like business and work lives that people don't recognize. And especially now where we're living in times where there's so much danger of like genuinely life-threatening danger that I think people should be more forgiving if certain individuals are not as vocal online. I'm not necessarily saying that like we should commend them for staying silent or things like that, or we should commend people but it does take a certain amount of guts, to have a very big following and to speak out against an establishment that is very, very powerful, no? And to speak out, like, that's what people I think have sort of lost sight of. Like, it's still difficult because if it was easy, then everybody would be doing it, diba? If it was easy and if it was as simple as that, then and as simple as like parang why don't you get like etc. like that. We have to understand that there's a propaganda machine. We have to understand that they have a hand in so many, and that's the function of a propaganda machine, misinformation nga. Like there are so many people out there who probably aren't speaking out because they don't even know nga what's right from what's wrong, what's real from what's not, diba? Or there's just a misunderstanding, and they probably don't want to get caught in all that. And it's really hard to get nowadays, like to get into like a space on the internet where there's no hostility. And sometimes people also just want to protect themselves, their interests, their loved ones. It's not always selfish either. Sometimes you just want to protect your family, the people who matter to you. And I think that it does take a certain, like I hope that more people will be willing to step up, like whoever can, because if you can, that in itself is a wonderful privilege that you should be able to sort of, because it's a freedom that not everybody I think now is allowed, diba? Like it's a little bit of freedom that parang are we really free even online? Like diba? So like people who are able to should, purely because like not everybody can. But we also have, that means that we have to recognize that if you're fighting online, you recognize also that there are people that you are fighting for everybody. Diba? You're not just fighting for people who are on your side. That's how social justice works. It's supposed to benefit.
That's true.
It's supposed to be good for everybody, not necessarily benefit everybody. Obviously, there are people who are already benefiting off of these broken systems. But it's like if you're gonna fight for social justice, you have to. It's for the health of society. It's not just for the health of you and whoever it agrees with you. Diba? It's like at its core. But I think people for some reason forget
Thank
that.
you, Kakie and Macoy. I think that was a lot. That was a lot of information to process, but very reassuring statements, especially when both of you confirm that you are educating yourselves on these issues and trying to process things before speaking out, and sometimes choosing to stay silent because it's the better way to do things. And sometimes we understand that sometimes it's better for on the side of the influencers and their families and friends. And finally, that recognition of being limited and not being able to understand deeply everything for a given period of time. We know that there is a pressure, and it's good that you are trying to keep up. But please do not sacrifice your mental health for this. Now, for our last question, what is your advice to emerging influencers or people who are active online trying to speak up about issues? What is your advice to them in their endeavor of being more active and being more vocal about issues online? That's the last question. We can start with Macoy this time, I guess.
We must acknowledge that these content creators or influencers who are choosing to use their platform for the common good and to spread good information through information. Number one, you're doing a great job, and thank you for that. No, because in this age where fake news and misinformation is very rampant, we need more people like you. And if you are afraid to speak because you feel na baka meron kang death threat, ganyan, or baka nafe-feel mo na you get bashers, just shrug them off. You disarm them, you know. And tayo kasi we have the power naman to continue doing the good, doing the great. Kasi alam naman natin na sumasay tayo sa tama. So, ba't tayo natatakot, di ba? Ba't tayo natatakot? So, and of course, if you feel na there's already a threat, don't be afraid. There are lawyers out there that can help you, right? There are lawmakers na tumutulong, no, para sa mga tao na ito. But for the past 3 years that I've been creating content and posting content that's related sometimes to social issues, never ko naman na experience na ma-approach sa mall at sabihan na, hoy, ikaw, pangit ng content mo. Diba? Walang ganun eh. Wala pa ako na-experience na ganun. Diba, Kaki, like you mentioned earlier, parang we never had an experience wherein people approach us personally, face to face, and tell us na, okay, ang pangit ng content mo, hindi ka nakakatuwa, ganito kulay mo, something like that. Di ba? Parang ako, never ko pa na-experience yung ganun. But kasi people are braver online. Kasi syempre, online yun eh. Di ba? Wala namang mukha minsan because they use fake accounts. And to spread true and right information. And with now that we are approaching on a new endeavor, especially next year, wherein there will be a transition of government, let's just use our right resources to inform everyone that we should go out there and register to vote and kilatisin kung sino ang leader na ihahalal. Yun naman importante doon. And well, yeah, thank you. Thank you for creating content that's related to, promoting the good, continuing the good, and spreading the right information.
Thank you, Macoy. And then finally, Kaki.
The biggest thing I learned online, and I think that this was due in part because growing up we weren't allowed actually to be online a lot. I wasn't allowed to have an Instagram until I was 16, like a public Instagram, and then sort of the same for Twitter, although I was a little more active on Twitter now when I was 15ish. But I know a lot of people my age who were online since like they were like 8, 9, 10, and etc. and things like that. And so I think that allowed me to sort of keep this perspective of I don't want to be anybody else online except myself. And that's always my number one piece of advice also to people. I think that it applies to all areas of life, but especially online, because so much of our identities can super get muddled between, I think people need to take social media presence with a grain of salt because that's really only a part of who somebody is. But at the end of the day, if you're going to allow your social media to be part of who you are or be a lot of how you are perceived, make sure that it really is you. No, be honest. Be if there's something you don't understand, ask questions. Because I've learned so much from people. I've made so many friends over quarantine just out of pure curiosity, asking about issues like, can somebody please help me learn about this? Can somebody please talk to me about this, etc. And I made so many friends, and like I DM these people regularly. I consider Macoy and I have never even met in real life. I think that really messes with my brain so much. Like I'm so surprised that like, parang why do I have the memories of being with these people and being really close and like interacting and hugging with these people and feeling safe with these people when they don't exist? No, Macoy. Like it's so funny for me to say like I miss you because we've never even met in real life, which is insane to me. But it just goes to show how beautiful social media can be when it's used correctly, when it's used kindly, when you have the best intentions in your heart, and when you're just honestly yourself. No, because there's so many people, so many beautiful people online who we can all learn a thing or two from. I think you can learn something from everybody. Because even the people who you disagree with, even the people who don't necessarily contribute very much to your life as a whole, you still learn from them. You learn through these experiences online. And so I think, as McCoy said, like, yeah, keep doing it. Please be brave. Thank you for caring at all. No? Thank you for doing your best to make the world a better place. And don't forget also though that like you are building your own space online. You are cultivating your own, and you are fully allowed. You're fully allowed to feel like you want to keep it safe sometimes, or to feel as if yung parang diba, like just I guess rephrase. Just put yourself in your like put yourself in a safe headspace where you can have these conversations but make sure also that you're not sacrificing your mental health. Make sure that you're not sacrificing your identity as a person. And if things get too tough, if things get too yung nakakapagod na sobra, like don't worry, it's okay because there's so many more people online anyway who are fighting the same fight also. It's not always up to you. You've got friends online. There's a great community of activists and advocates there who've been at it so much longer than so many of us online have been. There's so many people online who've been at it longer than I've been alive, which is like, that's why I'm so scared. I'm so intimidated nga by the Twitter audience, sometimes the online community of activists and advocates there. But that just means that there's so many people who are fighting this good fight. It's not up to one person, diba? Kaya tayo, like, that's why we have to work together. And that's why I think, like Macoy was saying, like registering to vote, for example, that's like a great thing now that everybody I think should definitely hop on, because malapit na halalan. September na is the due date of the due date tuloy. September na is the cutoff for registration, no? And so if anybody's listening to this and you're going to be 18 or up, 100 days from now. Okay, so we're recording this June 22 na, no? And so that's in 100 days. Oh my god, that's so scary. Takot tuloy ako. But yeah, I think that if you're going to just make sure, if you're going to be 18 or older on or before May 2022, please register to vote. Yung kapatid ko po si Miel, she's going to be 17, so she's very, very mad at herself kasi birthday po niya September. So kung may tao po dyan na magiging 18 on or before May 2022, please register on behalf of my sister. No, just kidding. Please register for yourselves, because karapatan po yan, but it's also, it's a given right, but it's a right you should exercise. I think it's a right that we all have the responsibility to exercise for ourselves. And yeah, so thank you for having us, Christian. And I love you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Macoy. Thank you, Kakie. Those are very inspiring messages for our young people. Now, perhaps my final takeaway is that although social media and the work of influencers like exist in an entirely different universe, it can impact the elections, but it is not the sole or like the only means to impact the election. It is still important to encourage people to vote, educate young people and communities to vote for the correct politicians or leaders that align to their needs, that addresses their needs. That's it. Thank you for tuning in. We hope that we could see you again in our next episodes. This podcast is brought to you by CALD Youth and the Friedrich Naumann Foundation. Thank you and goodbye.